And a warm welcome for Ruth Adele.
I'm not a religious person, and I'm sometimes spiritual, but sometimes I have to be whopped upside the head to get that the universe is telling me something about my life. 1973, Madison, Wisconsin, the University of Wisconsin. I'm in my 4th year of my undergraduate degree. I ended up getting my degree in genetics, but really it's that I was in pre-vet. And at the end of my 4th year, when it was time to fill out my application to veterinary school, I couldn't do it. It wasn't the right time, it wasn't the right vocation for me. What else was going on in my life for those 4 years of school is I was deeply involved in what we called the food movement. The slogan of the day was food for people, not for profit. The natural food stores were owned by the people who, and operated by the people who shopped there. The warehouses where the food came from to the co-ops was owned by the co-ops. And I was learning a lot about holistic medicine, about nutrition, about herbal medicine, and that's how I was treating myself and my friends and my animals. And I realized I could not go to school to learn about drugs and surgery as healing modalities for humans or animals. And I decided I just had to put my education on hold. I didn't know what was next. For the next 5 years, I worked as a member of the workers' collective that operated the warehouse that sold food to all the food co-ops in Wisconsin and Northern Illinois. And it was great. I learned communication skills. I learned everything I know about business today. I learned from that job. And I learned how to drive diesel truck, which later I was able to drive many large vehicles. I drove a school bus as a result later because I had that skill. And after 5 years, so now it's 1978, there was a day when I was sweeping, and just sweeping, and I was all by myself, and I started singing along with the rhythm of it, and I was singing a song that was out at the time by a women's band named B.B. Caroche, and the name of the song was Gotta Make Something of My Life, or that was the refrain anyway. And so I was just singing, gotta make something of my life. And you know how at first you're just going with the rhythm of a song and then you listen to the words and go, okay, time to go back to school. And the next day I looked into what do I need to do to go to veterinary school, and I found out that they had indeed changed the prerequisites, that there was one more biochemistry class I had to take. And it was just a 3-credit class, just 1 semester, I can do this. And the timing was perfect, it was September, school was starting. So I went to the first 2 lectures and it was excruciating. I would look around the room. I'm at the University of Wisconsin, it's one of the biggest schools in the country, there'd be 300 people in a lecture. And I felt out of place. It wasn't the right place to be. This was not what I wanted to do. I felt different from all these people somehow. And I went, but I just had to tough it out. That's okay, it's just 1 class, and then I can go to veterinary school and move on with my life. The 3rd lecture, after the lecture, I was leaving the building. I was coming out from the dark interior of the red brick building into the bright sun of a September afternoon, and I got neon lights. I got naturopathic medicine in a big arc, and I didn't know what it was. All I knew was I have to be obedient to this. This is something. And I got on my bike and I rode to the university library to look it up. And I found out what naturopathic medicine is. I found out that it's a 4-year postgraduate medical program. The prerequisites are pre-med. Well, I had pre-vet. Pre-vet is way beyond pre-med because it's pre-med plus a bunch of animal courses besides. And so I already had all the prerequisites. Okay, great. I found out that naturopathic doctors are licensed as primary care practitioners and that they work to find the cause of a problem instead of cover up the symptoms. That they put everybody on an individualized nutritional program and plus whatever supplements or herbs or homeopathic remedies, lifestyle management kind of things about exercise, this and that. It fit in with everything in my philosophy about health and healing and incorporated my science background. I can be a very nerdy scientist sometimes. Some people here know that. And it was a perfect fit. I recognized it. Clearly, it recognized me. And I found out very quickly that there were only 2 schools in the country at the time. There was one in Portland, Oregon, and one in Seattle. I submitted applications to both. I got accepted to both. I literally flipped a coin to decide to move to Seattle. I'd been in Madison for 10 years. I left my beloved community and got rid of most of what I owned, except for what would fit into my 1969 Rambler with me and my cat. And we drove across the country to Seattle. On the very first day of orientation in this tiny little profession, 2,500 miles away from where I'd been living, there were 28 people in the room, or 28 of us in the class, and I already knew 2 of them. One of them was Steve. Steve was a man that I worked with in the food movement in Madison. We had a lot of friends in common. He worked at one of the co-ops, and I felt like, yes, okay, I brought home with me to Seattle. The other person I knew was Johnny. Johnny and I went to junior high and high school together in northern Illinois. And we had graduated from high school in 1969. In our senior year, we were lab partners in physics class. We were 2 of the science nerds in our school in Glenview, Illinois. And Johnny was there. He was going to be with me all 4 years of naturopathic school. It was awesome. Am I in the right place at the right time? Oh, yeah. So then, I did the 4 years of naturopathic school. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, and I loved every single day. It was just awesome, and everything that I had dreamed of and more, and much harder than they ever had described it. I graduated in 1983, and I moved to Olympia, Washington, and set up a practice there. I practiced there very successfully for 8 years, but you know what? It rains all the time there. It's very moldy. I needed a dry place. I needed the sun. And various circumstances, I ended up here in Colorado Springs at the end of 1991. And everything worked out great. I was only the 2nd naturopath here. My practice was full immediately. You guys probably know where I am. I'm on Uinta in the same place. I've been for 20 years now. Then in 1995, I was driving up for Thanksgiving in Guffey, and I spun out on black ice and spun around and went backwards down a ravine and turned the car on its side, broke an axle. I was okay. I needed a spinal adjustment and a massage. I didn't get injured. I went back to work on Monday, obviously using a rental car for several weeks while my car was being repaired. And then about 2 weeks after getting back to work, I hit severe PTSD, post-traumatic stress. And I was jumpy at everything. Somebody would come to the door, the phone would ring, I'd be jumping out of my skin. I went to see a therapist that specializes in PTSD, And she said, I want you to take 6 months off of work. And I said, well, you know, I can't afford to take 6 months off, but I'm going to try to take off 6 weeks. I knew I had to. I could not go even back into my office. I made an appointment, a flight reservation to go to Hawaii. A friend of mine lived on the big island of Hawaii. I sat on the beach and let the sensation of the waves, the rhythmicity of the waves, even out my central nervous system. The sounds of the birds, the feeling of the air there, the moisture in the air. It's just so conducive to healing. It was awesome. And after about 2.5 weeks there, I realized I really had healed that part, but I had a big question. Did I still want to be a naturopathic doctor? Was this still what my life was about? It didn't ring true at all anymore. Didn't seem to be the right fit. I was scheduled to fly out at 6 in the morning the next day, and so I was going to the little natural food store to get some food for the plane. And I pulled up, as I drove my rental car into the little tiny parking lot of the little tiny natural food store 5,000 miles from my home on this island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, there was a cluster of 3 people on the sidewalk, 2 hovering over the third, who was laying on the sidewalk clearly injured. I went on automatic pilot, jumped out of the car and said, I'm a doctor, can I help? One of the people turned and looked at me and said, Ruth, what are you doing in Hawaii? This was someone who knew me as a doctor. She had been involved with a naturopathic doctor, and who she was in my life was the ex-lover of my best friend from Seattle. And I was, Diana, it's so nice to see you. But I had to move on because somebody was injured. The other helper turned and looked up and said, Ruth, it's so good to see you. And it was Morocco. Morocco was a former patient and the ex-lover of my best friend from Olympia. So validated. And I claimed myself as a doctor, and these 2 people who recognized me as a doctor 5,000 miles away from home were right there at the right time. I squatted down to help the person who was injured, started asking the orientation questions, time, place, circumstances. And she said, no, I didn't hit my head, I injured my knee in the ocean, and then I came here, and when I got out of my car, I fell on the sidewalk. And she said, what's your name? And I said, Ruth. And she said, no, what's your last name? And I said, Adele. And she said, you're Ruth Adele? You were on the board of trustees when I was a naturopathic student in Seattle. I call this the triad of recognition. And I spent time with her about her knee. We decided she had to be transported to our colleague's office where we could do everything for her knee. I spent the rest of that afternoon counseling her. I found out that this young naturopathic doctor had practiced for a year or 2 in the state of Oregon, and she hit a wall, and she got to a point that she didn't know if she wanted to be a naturopathic doctor or not. She didn't know if it was the right fit. And so she booked a flight to the Big Island so she could sit on the beach and let the waves straighten out her central nervous system so she could decide if she wants to be a naturopath or not. I can't make this stuff up, you guys. And I counseled her and said, girlfriend, being a naturopathic doctor is the most awesome thing you can do. You put all this work in, of course you have to do it. Go for it. Well, you know, I don't remember her name, I never saw her again. Obviously, I went home feeling really good about myself and really good about where I was professionally and my choices I'd made. And it's 2013 now, and I've been in practice 30 years. And a little over a year ago, I got a phone call from a photographer with The Independent, and he left me a message saying, I need to make an appointment to take a picture of you for an upcoming issue. And I called him back and said, no, you've got the wrong number. I'm not going to be in an upcoming issue. And he called me back and he said, yes, you are. And I called him back and said, okay, we have to talk. We can't leave these messages for each other. What are you talking about? I'm not in an upcoming issue of The Independent. And he said, okay, I'm not supposed to tell you. I'll give you a hint. They vote. Best of! There's a new category, Best Naturopath, and I'm in it.